You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Hello and welcome back, everyone, to Round 7, our final round of Swiss for the fourth weekly of the Eternal Tournament Series Season 5. I am, of course, your host, Bairdrus, once again joined by my wonderful co-host, Sir Rhino.
Yeah, here we go. Final round, and we've got a doozy of a matchup here. We've got Kcnabrev at 5-1 on a Praxis mid-range list with the pair down up against Unearthly, hoping to play spoiler at 4-2 on, you guessed it, Rhino plate. So Kcnabrev, if he gets the win here, guaranteed in. Unearthly at 4-2 can still sneak in. There will be a couple 5-2s in here. We'll have to see how the tiebreakers pan out. But Kcnabrev, if it wins, definitely in. If it loses, gets a little bit sketchier. So it's quite a bit on the line here.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a tense matchup here for both players. And we're seeing, of course, Unearthly on what would be known as his deck at this point, Rhino plate. And he's going up against, as we said, Kcnabrev, who's playing Praxis midrange. And we have seen a lot of copies of Praxis midrange today, but I don't think any pure copies. I think we might have seen one pure copy of Praxis midrange. And most of the decks we've been seeing are these dark Praxis midrange deck, or dark heart, as they've been calling them. So it's a little more interesting to see a purer version. Still see Xenon Initiation and cards like that making the list. Really, they're just playing more of copies like Praxis Displacer and Obliterates in the main board, as opposed to some of the removal. So should be an interesting matchup. Yeah, either way. Who are you going to give the favorite in this one, Rhino?
Oh boy, it's hard to bet against Unearthly anytime that he's on Rhino. I'm gonna be cute here and go with whoever gets the play the most. I think this is really going to come down to it's a Rhino game, right? Can Unearthly get the ball rolling? Can he be on the play, get those war cries quickly, and get something big and scary? In the meantime, it's up to Kcnabrev to find the torches to answer things early, not fall too far behind, and then if it does, hope that Praxis Displacer Sandstorm Titan helps you stabilize so that you can eventually get to Heart of the Vault. But we're on our way here, and Kcnabrev had the play and open on Initiative the Sands, but Unearthly had the torch to respond.
Yeah, able to combat that one immediately. And we see Unearthly leading off now with the Rhino Outlaw. Kcnabrev kind of relying on that Initiative of the Sands, it looks like, to kind of ramp him out. He might have a torch of his own here, though, as we see he does, taking care of Rhino Outlaw. So returning to a 0-unit board.
And Kcnabrev is on turn 3, facing down an empty board from Rhino. That's got to be a nice spot to be in. Gets to develop his power with an Amber Acolyte, and we'll see what kind of 4-drop comes out of Kcnabrev or some other combination of things here. Unearthly gets the 2-drop down, has to play that banner afterwards, and gets a hold up torch.
Yeah, still holding up torch here in case Kcnabrev leads off with anything too dangerous that he can take care of with just a single torch. Unfortunately for him, Sandstorm Titan not going to be one of those cards he's able to answer immediately.
Yeah.
He does pick up the Valkyrie Enforcer, though, so he will be able to at least silence the Sandstorm Titan and start creating this army of flyers. He does have the Silverwing Familiar and the weapons to suit it up with, so not too far off.
Yeah, Unearthly's got the flyers and the tools, but is it going to be too slow to develop here is really the question. It looks like the answer might be no, as Kcnabrev kind of takes this turn off to develop their own resources here. Seek Power, Temple Scribe, Seek Power. I think if you're Unearthly, you're kind of breathing a sigh of relief that Kcnabrev didn't quite up the pressure there. Opting to even swing with the 5/6 there, and maybe let Unearthly sneak in a Warcry here with that 2/2.
Yeah, it might be coming in here with the Rhino Outlaw. He also elects to drop the Scepter here. Not going to save for the Silvering Familiar. Instead, going to take the opportunity to push as much damage as he can, stack those Warcry triggers up on his next unit or weapon. Kcnabrev, curious to see if he has the Heart of the Vault here to respond to this. I'm assuming that's what he's been building towards. Predatory Carnosaur also pretty powerful here, but it is going to be a Heart of the Vault.
Oddly deciding to not kill the 2/2 Outlaw, instead getting the Ronin out of the way and guaranteeing the 3 extra damage from these little guys that are swinging in. Just taking the really aggressive line instead of taking out what's potentially a bigger threat.
Yeah, an interesting play there, though. This may
Yeah.
work out well for Kcnabrev. It's going to pay off for him here, it looks like. Currently, I mean, Unearthly's got a couple of blockers here, but Kcnabrev can continue to get aggressive with these units, and Unearthly doesn't have a great way to combat them, really. He can make like a triple block here on the Sandstorm Titan or the Heart of the Vault. Double block with the 4/4 Tinker Overseer, obviously, but even still, I mean, that's a lot of pressure out of Kcnabrev right here. He's going to probably swing for what would be a lethal attack here and force Unearthly to chump some units away and still lose some more health.
And this is all not counting the fact that, something could have been reduced in cost by this Heart of the Vault, and we see it there. The Predatory Carnosaur taking out that 4/4, and now Unearthly's in a real rough spot. If I'm Nabrev, I would have swung with the 1/1 there. I mean, Unearthly's already basically forced to block your other large stuff. I would have suicided a 1/1 to get 2 extra damage in there. Especially, but he opts to not, and now Unearthly goes to 5 here, and we'll see if Nabrev has another follow-up here. He has a little bit of power still to spare.
Yeah, and if you're Unearthly, this has got to be a hard match to get out of, and the power is certainly not going to do it. He can't even buy himself another turn, I don't think.
He can... I don't know. Actually, you jump with the flyer, so you go to 6, but you're not winning. You're not winning from this spot if you're Unearthly. There is nothing to do here that can possibly get you out. And Displacer's definitely gonna shut down any hope you may have somehow still had.
All right, so Kcnabrev gonna take care of the first game. As we're going to move into these players' sideboards, let's take a look at what Unearthly's got for the matchup.
Let's see. Against a big mid-range deck like this, I imagine you're just bringing in the Vanquishes and Rebukes, something like that. Praxis can have issues with flyers, so there's some appeal to the Soulfire Drake. I don't expect you to bring in anything like Paladin Oathbook or Ruin or even Protect. I don't know if that's enough in this matchup. Yeah, they're playing things like Torch and stuff like that, but maybe it ends up making the cut. Especially if you end up cutting stuff like Torch, if you are Unearthly. Like, I think that card's coming out for bigger, better removal. We'll have to see here.
Yeah, and on the other side of the table, we got Kcnabrev with this Praxis mid-range deck. He's got a Xenon Initiation, likely to see that come in. 2 Scorpion Wasps, definitely going to assume that those are coming in as well. Groundbreaker possibility, not really necessary here. Healer's Cloak, I don't mind either. I kind of like Healer's Cloak.
I am not a fan of Healer's Cloak against Rhino. Like, they're an aggressive deck, but they're not a burn deck. They're winning by getting a very large unit out, really. So I'm not a huge fan of that. Same with the Xenon Initiation. I don't know if that's fast enough for Rhino. Like, a lot of the times that Rhino wins is because their early units stick, and Xenon Initiation's not helping with that. And then once they do have a unit that sticks, they're getting weapons on them, and they might just be bigger than yours. But
yeah, that is quite possible.
I do agree with the Scorpion Wasp. The Groundbreaker is nice, and that it's like a big unit that can block well and dodges Vanquish. The issue is that triple fire cost.
Yeah, triple fire is a lot. We do have to admit here.
So I just don't know how you find room for all of these cards when your main deck already seems pretty good. The only card I don't love in this matchup is like Dawnwalker. It's just a 3-drop that doesn't block well. I think that's what you're probably cutting for these Scorpion Wasps. It's really just a question of, do you cut the rest of the Dawnwalkers for something else that's better?
Yeah, he does have 4 copies here. Interesting to note, Kcnabrev playing this Praxis mid-range deck doesn't have Champion of Impulse on the list. Some people have been pulling Champion of Impulse out, and some people think that card is way too good to take out. What is your take on it, Rhino?
Generally, I am a big fan of it as a 4/4 for 4 that can also ramp you. Like, if I'm building a Praxis mid-range list, I'm trying to play it over like the Amber Acolyte we see here, right? We see 4 copies of Amber Acolyte. I would try and make my power base work so that I can eschew playing Amber Acolyte in a 2-faction deck. I realize casting Heart of the Vault's important, but Kcnabrev's also only playing 3 copies of it, and you're a 2-faction deck, and you're also playing 4 Seek Power. Like, I think your fixing is good enough at that point that you don't really need Amber Acolyte as like that kind of source of power, and I'd prefer to just play another big nice 3. But Kcnabrev opting to not go that route, and we'll see how it plays out. I think right now it does make sense to play Dawnwalker over it in a lot of matchups, just give you even more length in the game. But this game is underway, and Unearthly's got 1 Warcry unit and a whole bunch of Finest Hours, a bird, and a weapon. Kind of exactly what you expect. But again, he was on the draw here, and that could end up being costly.
Yeah, if Kcnabrev can get off to a good start, this could cost Unearthly. That being said, Kcnabrev's suite of 3 drops aren't particularly fantastic, and he played a depleted power anyway. So he's basically conceding the early game to Unearthly to have his way with the board, and Unearthly is certainly responding to that, going to drop a Silverwing Familiar and very likely suited up with a hammer next turn.
Yeah, and wow, his turn 4 play is a Amber Acolyte. That is, you got to be so happy if you're Unearthly here. Your opponent was on the play, had no initiates, no torches, nothing on turn 2, and their turn 4 play is a 2/1. Like, this is the Rakano dream right now. Kcnabrev is going to have some incredible cards coming up really soon to get back in this game.
Yeah, he's going to need a Sandstorm Titan here to even just bring these units down on the board, and even that, I'm not sure if that's going to be enough with these double Finest Hours. Do you see the Sandstorm Titan? So that's the first piece, but the double
the Oath Book did come in.
Pretty nasty here. Yeah, interesting that the Oath Book came in. I guess Unearthly figures he's only going to be able to have 1 big unit, as you were saying, so keep attacking with 1. It seems a little slow, but I mean, it's going to work out here.
Yeah, okay. No, we talked about the key to beating Praxis is getting 1 huge unit. They have trouble dealing with that, especially when it has an Aegis. Like, that means you're not going to be able to simply displace it or something. And even if you do, it keeps all the buffs from Oath Book. So this is a really tough spot for Kcnabrev. Stuck on 4 power. Now that's 1 Titan down. If you drop another one, it's still not going to be able to block this. Just this is going to be quite a situation to work your way out of.
Yeah, and Kcnabrev just not really having anything he can do. With that might signal Scorpion Wasp, but he took the turn off. That's his like singular out here, I would say.
Yep.
And he does have the Scorpion Wasp. Okay, so he will be able to take down the Flyer, and he'll be able to trade off. There are a ton of Warcry triggers on that Rakano Outlaw, though. Yeah. I don't know how you're killing that one.
Yeah, that one's going to be a tricky thing for Praxis to deal with. It's not like you can simply Shatterglass Mage away all of the war cries that have been given to it. So that's basically a chump block every turn kind of card and hope they never find a plate to put on it. Yep, Torch clears away the other unit unless Unearthly wants to save it. We'll see if he elects to do that. It does let him attack with both units next turn. It means you're not getting the Oath Book buff. We'll see what he decides to do. I like getting Warcry 2 next turn.
Yeah, I like getting Warcry 2 as well here, but I think he is just going to hold on to it in case of any emergency situations, any reason he might need it. So he's just playing conservatively with it. I can respect that as well. You see the Dawnwalker chump block here, and Unearthly's got a fantastic follow-up in this 5/5 Champion of Glory.
Just 2 absolutely massive quick draw units backed up by a Finest Hour, and Kcnabrev is still on 4 power here. It's not a great spot. And again, I mentioned how I'm not the biggest fan of Dawnwalker in this matchup, and we saw kind of what you expect him to do every game, just chump block, right? So here comes the Praxis Placer to buy a little bit of time, bounces this 8/8 back to hand, but again, the Warcries are on it. The damage is done. Kcnabrev just trying to not die, but I don't know how he wiggles out of this.
And Unearthly picking up yet another weapon here. I mean, he's just making unkillable units. Kcnabrev absolutely cannot deal with this situation. There is just no way. Scorpion Wasps aren't going to do it. He would need some combination of like
another displacer is likely to show up here.
4, 5, 6 blockers, something like that. Like to even be able to handle one of these units just as a 10/10 with quick draw it takes so much to actually kill one. Like, he can continually chump block, and maybe that's his game plan, but I'm not sure how you eventually win from there.
Yeah, the problem is Unearthly gained a lot of life. 42 life. It's not like you can somehow counter race this, especially when that 11/11 has endurance too. This is again, you've got your Praxis Displacers and Shatterglass Mages. Yeah, there's the Shatterglass Mage to at least shrink that Champion of Glory down a little bit, get some Dawnwalkers back. But again, you're still just chumping every turn and with no real counter attack in sight.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a few turns, and we see yet another unit going to be coming down for Unearthly. Probably, yeah, doesn't even want a mentor here, just needs the next body on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't care about the lifesteal. At 42, he is sitting pretty comfortably under no threat from Kcnabrev, and Kcnabrev is just running out of threats by the turn.
Yep, just a third lethal unit here for Unearthly, plopping that down. Kcnabrev finding more chump blockers to buy time, but it's really just delaying the inevitable at this point. Praxis does not have the kind of tools to come back from this sort of board state where your opponent has 3 extremely large units.
And there's the flyer. That's likely going to be the nail in the coffin by itself. Without another Sandstorm Titan to hold down the ground, Kcnabrev is going to be in a very, very tricky situation. An even more tricky one than he finds himself in right now, which is pretty hard to believe, given the state of this board that Unearthly's managed to build.
Yep. So Unearthly will most likely find us hour here to keep this lethal unit in play. And yeah, now we're going back to still. Unearthly has 3 lethal units. Kcnabrev has 1. You can bring back some Dawnwalkers, but those aren't going to be able to block. And this might be the scoop here. We'll see if Kcnabrev tries to hold on for one more turn, but he's going to need some really wild cards here. I don't think Seek Power is that.
Yeah, I don't see a world where he's getting out of this. He needs at least 2 more units to be able to at least hold off for another turn. And even if you are able to chump block with 2 more units, you're just running out of cards. This should be the concession here. And we
All
will
right,
be moving
Displacer.
on to the game.
Again, Kcnabrev's holding on for what we're not sure, but maybe he's hoping Unearthly just misclicks the concession button or something. That got to play to your outs, however long of a shot they might be. So, Unearthly continues to just parade out these large units. You can bounce them back to hand all you want, but they're coming back.
Yeah, and at this point, again, Unearthly demanding 3 more blockers, and Kcnabrev finally hitting the end of his rope. We're going to go to a Game 3 decider between these 2 players.
Yep. So we saw Oathbook come in from Unearthly. It did a little there, but not a lot. But again, as we said, just getting the biggest unit in play is sometimes the key against Praxis, and Oathbook helps deal with that. And as we saw, those buffs stick around, so it's nice kind of counterplay to the Displacer plan from Praxis. That's one of Praxis's best strategies against Rhino. Get those weapons off them, set them back on tempo, or at least attempt to. But Kcnabrev's opener was just far too slow there. Just when your turn 4 is playing a 2-1 against Rhino, you're just...
Yeah, it just wasn't enough to get it done there, certainly. We'll see what happens in our third matchup, though. We'll see if Kcnabrev can run it back and manage to come out ahead this time, or if Unearthly can continue the onslaught we saw from last game. That hand is not going to do it. We're going to see a right there. That was ugly. And this one, not much better, actually. Very slow and nothing to put on these Silver Wings players.
The key here, Kcnabrev on the play for the 3rd game in a row, and that pause there means that they've got a torch in the holster as well. Of course, Unearthly's got a whole fleet of birds that don't mind being torched once. It's the second one that gets them. But yeah, Kcnabrev, again, slow start, doesn't have double time here, but Amber Accolade will shore that up. And maybe this time around, Kcnabrev will have a better play on 4. In the meantime, Unearthly just going to trot out some birds and hope to find a weapon for him. Got the Emerald Monument in hand. I think he wants something better than that.
Yeah, I mean, the 3/3 will help him out, but it just takes so long to get there. And meanwhile, Kcnabrev just chugging along on power. We'll see what he has to follow up here. It might be something such as a Sandstorm Titan. Yep. unsurprising there, we find Sandstorm Titan. And now this is looking very, very bad for Unearthly. Although he does have the Finest Hour next turn to hopefully take care of the Sandstorm Titan with the Valkyrie.
Kcnabrev has the torch in hand, though. We're almost certain of that. It's just a question of whether or not Kcnabrev has something better to do with that 5 power. The answer is no. Torch comes out, and we'll see. Oh, Xenon Initiation on the 2-1 to kill the bird while Unearthly's tapped out. So Unearthly's going to go into his 5th turn as Rakano with no units in play. It's a good spot to be if you are Kcnabrev, and not so good of a spot if you're the Rakano.
Yeah, absolutely. Would not be surprised here if Unearthly goes with another Valkyrie Enforcer. Actually, going to be a little surprised if he plays a Silverwing Familiar. Not that it's a terrible drop here, but it doesn't really do anything on the active board. If you play Valkyrie Enforcer, you at least have the hope to take down Sandstorm Titan, as long as you can dodge a torch.
Yep. Looks like no pause there means no torch. And Unearthly holding on to this monument, hoping that it eventually turns into a weapon that he can place on the familiar. In the meantime, Kcnabrev just going to keep up the pressure here, bounce that 3-3. We'll certainly note that pause. Going to sniff out the Finest Hour as well. And yeah, Unearthly's down to 12 and can drop 2 units here. Maybe what he opts to do. Or no, elects to hold up the Finest Hour instead. Maybe block one of these 3-2s and Finest Hour up to a 4-4, gain some life, and try and race that way.
This seems okay. Like, I see the line of play from him here, but I have to question how you ever win from this position. I mean, maybe next turn the Gem Blade will be good enough, but now you don't really have any way to trade off for the Sandstorm Titan.
Yeah, that's true. The Obliterate to the face takes Unearthly to 2, so if his plan was to Gem Blade, that only brings him back up to 6, which means he's dead. So that's not a good spot to be in. It looks like I'll have to have a bit of a change of plan here, and it might just be that Kcnabrev has another Obliterate. That one's just going straight to the face.
Yeah, very likely, though. If you're generally tapping out for burn that's not going to kill your opponent, you usually have a pretty good follow-up, so have to imagine Kcnabrev packing at least one more burn spell. Probably going to swing in for what would be a lethal attack here. Wait to see how it's blocked. Doesn't even wait. Just drops the Obliterate, and that's going to do it for this series. Kcnabrev taking down Unearthly 2-1 with Praxis midrange.
Yeah, I predicted the player who was on the play the most would win. Kcnabrev was on the play 3 times. There we go. Nice and tidy. Easy peasy. Now, of course, there were some other things that happened that game, but yeah,
we definitely
Unearthly's draw, all the losses were just like, oh, my first thing was this bad play on turn 3. Like, those were kind of the losses we saw on both sides. And turns out both decks are aggressive. One's trying to get under the other, but both aggressive decks are just trying to be aggressive.
Yeah, and obviously makes complete sense here. Unearthly just not able to get it done. That hand was just too slow in the final game. Didn't find the weapons early enough to suit up the birds. He just kept getting his cards torched off, bounced, just kept getting set back. So Kcnabrev piloting it well, taking down the series pretty comfortably, as we said, 2-1.
Yep.
That should put him in top 8.
Oh, 100%.
100%.
Yep. All the X and 1s will be in top 8, and there will be some number of X and 2s. 5 and 2, I think, like 3 or 3.5 somehow players will be 5 and 2 and in the top 8. I think we'll get 3 5 and 2 players in there. So we'll have to see how the tiebreakers play out, but we'll get back with the final top 8 shortly. Right now, we know the guaranteed top 8 is all the 6 and 1 players or better. So that's Kamado or Kamado, however you want to pronounce that, ended up going to 6 and 1 with that innovative armory list. Angry Chicken, we've seen a lot today on Big Cambrai. Master Machu on Ikaria Blue is at 6 and 1. SMJ also at 6 and 1 with that Dark Praxis list, and Kcnabrev, who we just saw take down an Earthly, is 6 and 1 with that Praxis mid-range list. So lots of big stuff right now in the top 8. We'll see if any aggro decks can sneak their way in, or if it's just going to be mid-range and control up here in the top 8.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be an exciting top 8 one way or another, and we will bring that to you folks in just a few. We're going to take a short break while we're waiting for the rest of the results to come in, so stay tuned. Do not go anywhere. We will be back momentarily.